Badass of the Week is produced by High Five Content.
Dublin, Ireland, the year 1014. An epic clash of arms rages on the battlefield at Clontarf. Viking marauders and Irish warriors rage and bellow, slamming axe and sword against shield, helm, and flesh. On one side of the battle is the fearsome Brodeer of Man, the brutal leader of the Viking army mercilessly ravaging Ireland. He serves leaders that trace themselves to the days of Turgis the Devil, the butcher of Clonmacnoise, who desecrated Catholic holy sites, murdered monks, and pillaged the land with impunity. Opposing him is a host of Irish warriors, united in the cause of breaking Viking power in Ireland for good. The Irish leader is a mysterious man, a great warrior, but we know very little about him. We don't know what he looked like, anything about his childhood, his girlfriend, his favorite color, or what he liked to do in his spare time. All we know is that his name is Wolf, and he is known as the Quarrelsome. He's an epic Irish warrior from the 11th century who only appears in history twice, and both times he is kicking someone's ass. Hello, and welcome back to Badass of the Week. My name is Ben Thompson, and today I am here with Badass of the Week producer Andrew Jacobs. Andrew, how are you doing today?
I am good. I'm excited to be back and excited to talk about, I feel like, one of the first stories I remember reading on your website.
Yes. So today we are going to talk about Wolf the Quarrelsome, which is just one of the great badass names from history, and I think one of the great badasses from history. So I'm very excited to do the episode today.
So I mean, I got to know, like, because there's not a lot of info based out there on this guy. I feel like, you know, where did you find this story? Because I don't think it's on Wikipedia now, but I don't think that article was on Wikipedia when you wrote your thing. It's like, so where do you even find this stuff?
Yeah, I'm not sure Wikipedia existed when I wrote this article back in like 2005, I think. Yeah, so Wolf the Quarrelsome came up. I guess here's what I'll say with him is one of the questions I get a lot when I do interviews and stuff is people asking me, who is your favorite badass? And that's a question for me is impossible to answer because there's so many good ones and I don't like to rank them and stack them and, you know, put them in order. I like Mad Jack Churchill. I like Wojtek the Bear. I don't know which one I like more than the other. So my answer to that question is usually Wolf the Quarrelsome, because Wolf the Quarrelsome kind of encapsulates everything that I wanted to do with Badass of the Week. So to your point of like, where did I come across this story? This was in the old days when I was running the website on GeoCities and there was nothing exciting on the internet. But I had real books. So I was getting all of these real books on Viking sagas and Viking mythology and history. And I was reading this book called The Saga of the Burning of Njal. And there's just like 2 lines about it in there. And it's like, and then this guy, Wolf the Quarrelsome, showed up and he did something extremely gruesome and destroyed the Viking army and the Viking leader. And then it just goes on to the next thing. Like, oh, here's, you know, and then this other thing happened. And then this king took over. And I'm just like, whoa, wait, this guy did what?
Did what?
Yeah. And so that's the kind of guy I like, where he's like, you know, he shows up, he does this one thing, he disappears from history. And it's so interesting. Like, I was like, I got to know everything I can. I got to find everything I can about this guy. And so then I really dove in and did it. And he was a chapter in one of my books. So, but yeah, it's the kind of story I love.
You were doing this, I think you were doing it basically the old-fashioned way. The only way you could do it more old-fashioned is if you were, if it was oral history, if someone just passed this story down to you, or 2, if you were there and witnessed it.
Right.
I had to go to the tape to see what it was. If you look at the Wikipedia article on Wolf the Quarrelsome, the first part of it, he first arrives in Wikipedia in April of 2005.
Okay. All right. Well, that's close then.
I suspect if I were a betting man, I would bet that it appeared on Wikipedia after it appeared on your website. because someone was probably like, "Whoa, this story's incredible! I need to add it to Wikipedia."
I have
so there
I have
you
the
go.
impression too that like the early Wikipedia entries are very different than the way they appear today. Also,
Oh, I mean, you can go back and I'm not going to go back and look at the original version of this. For all we know, it's a copy and paste of your story, which would be amazing for Wikipedia. But
that would be great.
yeah, no, you're continuing the tradition here of history. This guy might have been lost forever.
Yeah, there we go. And like it's just one of these fun stories that I come across, and you're like, I got to know more about this, and then you dive into it, and it turns out it's a really fun story. One thing I will say about Wolf that is interesting is that I do this book series called Guts and Glory. It's kind of my working title for it was Badass Junior, but it's basically like badass stories for middle school and high school age that, a teacher can assign to a student and not get dragged out into the street by the PTA and beaten with rods. And in that series, I was, edited a lot for language and sex stuff and kissing and all of that. But I have only ever in that series, over the life of that series, I was only edited once for violence. And that is the thing that Wolf is going to do to Viking ruler Brodir of Man and at the end of this story. And so,
all right, here we go.
Yes,
You're gonna have to listen to find out.
Yes. And so we are going to talk about Wolf the Quarrelsome. But before we do that, I want to set up Wolf is driving the Vikings out of Ireland. And it is a pretty short story. And I want to kind of tie him in together with a different kind of obscure badass character from Viking history and Irish history. I want to set up the guy who brought the Vikings to Ireland. So before we talk about Wolf the Quarrelsome, we are going to talk about Turgis the Devil, the butcher of Clonmacnoise, who is the Viking king who shows up and causes some trouble in Ireland.
Well, why don't we take a break and then we can start there?
That sounds like a plan. We are going to talk now about a Viking ruler known as Turgis the Devil, which is also a great name from history. And this is a name that is bestowed on him by his enemies and not his friends. Maybe his friends called him it and he liked it. That's like
you
a
never
Viking
know.
style. Yeah, that's Viking style.
It's a pretty badass name.
Yes.
Someone, my friends could name me, Andrew the Devil, and because they think I'm, just super badass. I could see it, but
yeah, you would totally make that.
That would never happen. That
would be your Reddit handle.
And I'm producing podcasts. That I'm not befitting of a name like that.
But if somebody called you that, that would be your Reddit handle forever.
Yeah.
So Turgis is operating in the 840s CE AD. And I'm going to start his section with a quote from Thomas More in his History of Ireland. He's writing a couple hundred years after this. But Turgis is one of the most hated men in the history of Ireland, has always been and will continue to always be. And what Thomas More writes about him is, quote, "To attempt to follow through all of its frightful details the course of outrage and massacre which continued to be pursued by the bands of Turgis throughout the remainder of that tyrant's turbulent life would be a task as wearisome as it is revolting." That's who we're talking about here.
Revolting was not what I was expecting there.
Yes.
We're worrisome. I'm like, oh, it's a long list, of course, and tragic or something. But revolting. Now let's. Here we go.
Yeah, it's gonna be. We're gonna get there. Because every so often in human history, there's a guy who is just so evil and cruel and unredeemable that like he is just considered pure evil by the people he was opposing. And for the Irish in the 9th century, that was Turgis the Devil. He's the butcher of Clonmacnoise. He's the desecrator of temples. He's the scourge of the Irish. And he's also the founder of the city of Dublin, which is interesting. Oh. Yeah.
Now, is the scourge of the Irish an official title or just a descriptor?
No, that's me editorializing.
Oh, okay. Bummer. I like that. The scourge of the Irish. That sounds official.
Yes. Well, okay. So Turgis shows up in 839 AD, And he's not the first Viking to attack Ireland. The Vikings have been raiding for around 40 years at this point. They've been attacking coastal towns. They've across, France and Germany, England, Ireland, all around Western Europe. They even get down into they attack Spain. They get down into the Mediterranean. They're raiding and looting and plundering, and they're doing the very Viking thing that you picture, where they sail a boat up to this thatched roof cottage's village. They attack, they set it on fire, they steal a bunch of stuff, they put it in their boats, and they sail away. When Turgis shows up in 839, he kind of ratchets everything up to 11 in terms of violence and intensity and scale. And the thing that really makes Turgis extremely hated and known as the devil and all of that is, he doesn't just come and attack these little fishing villages and steal whatever he can from these people who have very little. He learns and realizes that the Irish at this time, and largely today as well, are generally very Catholic. And they build these big churches, and they put all of their wealth inside of these churches. So Turgis realizes, hey,
like a bank.
Right. Yeah. There's a big building on top of this hill here, and it's full of gold and silver, and it's guarded by a bunch of guys wearing burlap clothes who have taken a vow of nonviolence. So
perfect.
Yes, this is great. You collected all of the wealth for me. All I have to do is go in there and take it. And, it's a little trickier. A lot of these Viking raids were smaller, and they didn't really want to fight. They just wanted to kind of smash and grab. But Turgis brings enough guys for a fight, and the Irish will defend these churches pretty heavily. They all retreat to the church when they're being attacked because it's going to offer them sanctuary. They can pray. They can organize a defense. But the Vikings fight them, and generally will, Turgis's guys fight them. They defeat them, and he doesn't care about this Catholic stuff. He's a pagan. He worships Odin and Thor and Freya and all of those. So he just goes in there, he busts the place up, he kills everybody, sets it on fire, and loots all of the treasure from the place.
As you do.
Right. And then on top of that, it turns out that Turgis's wife is a woman named Ota, and she is a priestess of Odin. And so after they have taken the town and looted the treasure, she performs sacrifices in the church, whether that's human sacrifices or animal. It's still kind of gruesome.
All right. That's taking things to that's definitely turning it up to 11.
Yes. Yeah.
Not just like killing everyone and burning down their villages and whatnot, but then desecrating everything they believed in.
Yes, exactly. Right. They're pulling the covers off of Bibles because there's some gold filigree on there. They're doing crazy stuff, right? And they're putting animal entrails all over the inside of the church. It's a task as wearisome recounting it as a task as wearisome as it is revolting. But this is what they're doing. Turgis the devil.
It's definitely getting revolting.
Yes. They do this to several towns, and then they attack the city of Armagh, which at the time was the seat of power for the Catholic Church in Ireland. It's where the bishop is. It's a big city. It's where a lot of it's where the bones of St. Patrick resided. St. Patrick, green beer and chasing the snakes out of Ireland, his bones were there, the holiest saint in Irish history. The Vikings attack it with axes and torches and pitchforks and all of that. And, there is some heroic Irish monk who was able to get the bones of St. Patrick out of the monastery before it's destroyed, because the Vikings would have destroyed it if they'd found it.
I understand on the one hand, saving lives. It's like, save the dead, save the bones,
save those bones.
Save those bones. He's already dead. Save it. I mean, I get it. They're holy. It's a relic and all that, but also they're literally saving bones instead of people.
Yeah,
maybe
exactly. So, but I mean, it was important at the time, and
and now we have the holiday.
Well, the Vikings, they take They take Armagh, they turn over the altars, they dump out the graves looking for treasure, they burn the place to the ground, they loot, they plunder. They stay for a couple of days. They don't just like smash it and go. They hang out there and they drink all of the whiskey in town and sleep in the
little
church.
holiday.
Yeah, just wild stuff, right? They're doing all of these animal sacrifices. Ota is doing her thing, sacrificing goats and prisoners and whatever else in the chapel. Just really rough stuff. They leave, the Irish rebuild the chapel at Armagh. He returns and loots it again. Then,
didn't you learn the first time?
Oh, cool. Thanks for putting that back for me. And then when they don't rebuild it the third time, he sails up the Shannon River to Clonmacnoise, which is like the second biggest abbey in Ireland. And, it's inland. It's not a coastal thing. There's a river there, but they weren't expecting 60 Viking longships to attack them by sea. So it's not heavily defended. They show up at Clonmacnoise. They massacre everybody. That's where he gets the Butcher of Clonmacnoise nickname. Clonmacnoise was a place that had attracted students from across England and France and Europe. Like, this was a center of learning and religious scholarship, and he's just going crazy.
Not anymore.
Not anymore, yes. So, he hangs out in Ireland and he realizes that in order to loot and plunder and raid up and down these, because he's raiding the coast, but he's going to start raiding the rivers too, because he's got these longships. And one of the things about the Viking longship is that it has a very shallow draft, so you can bring it up these rivers. And he needs a base. So he decides in 841 that there's a region that's kind of at the convergence of several rivers. The Irish call it Dublin, which means the Black Pool. And he decides to set up a settlement there, which is now the capital of Ireland, which is just really ironic, I feel like.
See, Ireland, you're welcome.
Yes, they do not like him. They still hate him, even though he did this. But yeah, they dislike him, and they never liked him, and they never will. And they decide, like, this guy's got to die. He's setting up, like, he's building buildings here. He's like, this was a trading post for him to kind of ferry the plunder from all of Ireland back to. He's either from Denmark or Norway, wherever he came from. He's heading back that way. We don't know for sure. And but for every red-blooded Irishman was like, this guy's got to die and we got to get him. So there's several stories about how Turgis eventually is gotten. But the one I like the best is that Ireland at this time is not a unified kingdom. There are several different regions, different, tribes that make up Ireland. And one of these regions, there's a king named Mael Sachnaill, and I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong because pronouncing the Irish language is very, very difficult. But this king, he decides, like, he sends an emissary to Turgis and he's like, look, we don't want to fight you anymore. Let's have an alliance. I will marry my beautiful young daughter off to your son, and we can ally together. And we'll if you stop raiding us, we'll send you all the treasure we have. But let's do this marriage first to signify, like, unity between our kingdoms. And Turgis says, okay. And he and his son and some of his Viking guys show up to this designated location where they're going to meet this princess. And
this sounds like a trap.
When they get there, there are 15 very beautiful handmaidens with their robes, and they're dressed in white, and they are beckoning to the Vikings. And when the Vikings run over to them, they find out it's actually just 15 guys in pretty dresses, and they have knives, and they just kill all these guys.
that is so good.
Yeah, he just found the prettiest guys and he had them shave their beards, and then he put them in dresses and was just like, come Vikings. And they came, and then they just were dudes with swords, and they killed all of them except for Turgis. They captured Turgis. Oh man.
Game of Thrones, the Red Wedding's got nothing on this.
Yeah, right.
Men in wedding dresses.
You thought you were going to get some, but you're just going to get shanked with this knife. And so they take Turgis alive. They kill all of his men. They kill his son. They take Turgis alive. and the King of Ireland has him beaten within an inch of his life, then bound up with chains and thrown in a river. Oh, thrown in a lake. They throw him in La Wheel. So unlike most horror movie villains, he does not resurface.
Yeah, I was gonna say, there's I feel like some of the other folks we've talked about over the years have, popped up in situations like that.
Yeah, like Jason Voorhees or Rasputin. So they're not dead, but no, he's dead. He's super dead. That's the end of him.
Good riddance.
Yes, good riddance to Turgis the Devil. That same Irish king, Mael, he wins a couple victories against the Vikings in Dublin, but he doesn't drive them out entirely. They stick around, and in a lot of cases, they start to gain some power, and Dublin becomes the seat of power for the Vikings. And that is what happens in the years following the death of Turgis the Devil. And it is going to be up to our friend Wolf the Quarrelsome to put an end to the Viking raids for good, because his guys are still around. They're still there. He's still got dudes. He's still got a Viking army in Dublin. They're still raiding and plundering and looting and doing Turgis the Devil-like things. And we're going to take a quick break. But when we come back, Wolf the Quarrelsome is going to put an end to that in an extremely violent manner. Stay with us.
Can't wait.
Wolf the Quarrelsome first appears in the 11th century, the early 1000s. We have a record of him on the Irish side, and we have a record of him on the Viking side. But aside from 2 or 3 references in history, there's not a lot on this guy. He is generally listed as a brother to the High King of Ireland, Brian Boru. Although we aren't sure whether he's an actual sibling, or if this was like, I'm a shield brother, I'm a warrior, you're my brother forever, that kind of thing. But Wolf the Quarrelsome is, picture like the most badass like Irish soccer hooligan you can imagine. He is just like this big, giant warrior dude, huge beard, long hair. I'm picturing like Celtic like tattoos and stuff.
His name is Wolf.
We don't know
he
what
can
he
really
like.
only look one way.
Yes. Yeah. We know his name is Wolf the Quarrelsome. The Vikings refer to him as Ulf, which is the Viking word for wolf, but Ulf also kind of sounds like the sound you make when you get punched in the stomach. That's a badass name. Ulf. Yeah. I am Ulf. And so he's a brother in some context of that word with Brian Boru.
I like to imagine that if they're brother, I mean, just the parents are like, they name their kids. We got, all right, this one's Brian. And they're like, yeah, we could do better than that. Wolf.
You're Wolf, yeah.
It's like mom clearly got to choose one name and dad got to choose the next name.
Yes.
Mom's like rolling her eyes. Wolf, og.
Wolf the Quarrelsome. Yes, it's amazing, right? And if they were blood siblings, he would have been younger, and we'll explain why later. But yes. So Brian Boru is a very important person in Irish history, and over the course of the last several weeks, we have been doing a thing where I'm trying to like match whatever I'm drinking with whatever the story is. I think that for Wolf the Quarrelsome and Turgis the Devil, the drink is the blood of your enemies with like a sidecar of Jameson or something. But today I brought Guinness because the harp on the Guinness is called the Brian Boru harp. It's a real thing. You can go see it at the university in Dublin. And Brian Boru is like I said in the Turgis bit, Ireland was kind of divided between all of these different kingdoms that are little city-states basically that were fighting each other. And what Brian Boru does is he leads this campaign and leads this war and unifies all of them. But that harp was one that belonged to him. And it's like a famous, it's a famous thing in Irish history. And it's the logo of Guinness and harp beer, which that seems perfect.
Interesting. So he's just going around uniting the country, playing the harp.
Yes.
Yeah.
Meet my friend Wolf the Quarrelsome.
Yeah. Wolf definitely. Wolf strikes me more of like a drummer.
Yeah, a drummer. There's like somebody blasts a horn, blasts one note on a horn, and that's like. And so Brian Boru is a very famous figure in Irish history. He unifies all of these different kingdoms together, except for one. There is a province called Leicester, and they don't want to join Brian Boru's new Irish kingdom.
Those bastards.
And what they do to help them, because Brian has almost the rest of Ireland on his side, is they call in their buddies, the Vikings from Dublin. And these Vikings have been hanging around. They've been doing raids. They've been plundering. They've been looting. Leicester has set up a deal with them to where they don't get plundered and raided. And when Brian comes knocking to kind of unify the Irish parts of Ireland, these guys don't want to join him. They're having some kind of beef with him, and they call in the Vikings to help. There's gonna have to be a fight. We're gonna have to fight this out. That's the deal. That's how this is gonna work. And that fight is the Battle of Clontarf in the year 1014. And the Battle of Clontarf is like the perfect name for a battle between Vikings and Irish. It feels like if you can feel both cultures in the name, like Battle of Clontarf. I don't know.
Clontarf.
I don't know. You can hear it being said in both accents, right?
Yeah.
And so basically everybody in Ireland gets together to have this big battle for the future of the island, right? And the Vikings and Leicester's on one side, and all of the rest of Ireland is on the other side. They bring all their weapons, their armor, their lead pipes, their pitchforks. This is going to be a showdown. We're going to throw down here. We're going to form up on this field. We're going to have the final battle for the fate of the kingdom. Now, the commander of the Irish forces, or at least on one of the Irish flanks, is Wolf the Quarrelsome. And Wolf, his name is Wolf, and he has an epithet by this point, the Quarrelsome, which is literally defined means this guy doesn't take crap from anybody.
I like quarrel. It's like the skirmisher. Like it's like not full on like berserk, but it's like he's just gonna things are gonna get messy with him.
Yeah, it's a little quarrelsome. It's gonna be a little quarrelsome. There is a similar. There is a similar quote I like about actually Turgis the Devil when they talk about him, because he rules over Dublin for a while, like a few years before he is murdered and thrown in a lake. But in one of the histories of the kings of Ireland, when they talk about the reign of Turgis the Devil, they say that he ruled in peace, but that the peace was a troubled one and its tranquility was often disturbed.
That's really underselling it.
Right. That to me is Wolf the Quarrelsome. He's quarrelsome. He's a little quarrelsome. You just gotta get to know him.
Just disturbing the tranquility a little bit.
Just disturbing the tranquility a little bit. You know, if you hadn't stepped on his shoes, you wouldn't have gotten your face punched out.
Yeah, exactly.
And so he's going to lead one of the wings of the attack here, and their raid against the Vikings. They blow the horn, and these two armies charge. Picture Braveheart, where you've got the guys in spears, and the Vikings are wearing chainmail, and they have swords, and there's the flags, and there's this big battle. The Vikings are carrying these two-handed long axes, and the Irish have spears and some swords that they were able to get from the Vikings and stuff, and axes, and there's just fighting. It's just battle, blood, destruction, mayhem, and Brodir of Man is the name of the Viking commander of one of their flanks. He's called Brodir of Man, which is a great name. I think he's from the Isle of Man, and that's why he's called that. But,
okay, I was gonna say lots of great names. I'm like of Man.
Yeah, Brodir of Man.
Pretty solid.
Sounds very like a lot of gravitas, right?
Yeah, these guys all sound very muscular.
I am picturing I'm picturing that. I'm picturing a movie version of this where everybody's just bodybuilders. Yeah.
Great names in this episode. Yes. Continue.
Okay, so these are huge armies, so thousands of warriors on each side. And Brodir of Man is leading the Viking side, and he's winning. He's defeating the Irish he's like breaking through their lines. The Vikings are very organized. They have shields, they have chainmail, they have metal weapons, like steel weapons. They're winning. Wolf the Quarrelsome's like, forget that. I'm going after this guy. I gotta deal with him. He's my biggest threat. So he leads his guys. And back in these days, like, you know, the leaders of these armies fought kind of at the front, and they had flags indicating where they are. And so Wolf sees the flag for Brodier and his guys, and he's like, I'm going there. We're going to go get him. So he goes over there. They fight their way through. Wolf, we can assume, had the toughest guys in the army along his, like, as his bodyguards or his royal guard or whatever. He fights through to Brodier, and he faces him, according to the sagas at least, he faces Brodier of Man one-on-one. They have this epic fight, and Wolf knocks him down. And Brodier gets back up again, and Wolf knocks him down again. And Brodier gets up a third time, and then Wolf knocks him down one more time. And then Brodier gets up and
stay down.
Yes, stay down, stop getting up. Knocks him down 3 times, kicks him down a hill. And then Brodier gets up and runs away.
Yeah, run away! Run! Yeah, it's
Run away.
like Monty Python and the bunny rabbit or whatever.
Yes,
run away!
Run away! Get away from this guy, Wolf the Quarrelsome. This guy's nuts, and I'm a berserker.
Yeah.
And so Brodier runs, and his flag bearer runs with him, and his army sees that he's running, and they start to run, and they get routed, and 6,000 warriors from the Viking and Leicester army are dead on the field, and Wolf sweeps around and wins the battle.
That is not what I would call leading by example, Brodier.
Yes.
Come on, man.
No. So the Irish win, and they've broken the power of the Vikings. They've broken Leicester. They've broken the power of the Vikings. Right. They're going to win.
It's a happy ending.
Well, it's a bittersweet ending, because while Brodier is bravely running away, you know, a lot of these leaders are leading from the front, but High King Brian Boru, he's 80 years old at the time of this battle, which, if Wolf the Quarrelsome is a younger brother, I mean, I guess he could be 20 years younger. He could be like in his 50s, but like he's an older guy, I think, when this battle's happening. Unless he's like figuratively the brother, then I guess he could be any age.
You never know.
We never know. But Brian Boru is an older man, so he's not he's not on the front lines. He's back at the tent, kind of leading. He's set all the plans in motion. He gave all of his commanders their orders. You go do this, you go do this. And now he's in his tent praying for victory. Okay. Brodier and his guys are running away from the battle, and they find Brian Boru's tent, and they go in there and they kill him while he's praying. And then they run away, screaming and yelling about how awesome they are.
Kill him! Run away!
We got him. Yeah, let's keep running away. But that was awesome. We're awesome.
Yeah.
You suck it. Yeah. And so Wolf the Quarrelsome defeats the Vikings, and then he returns back to the command tent to find his brother is dead. And I guess some people were around and was like, yeah, it was Brodier. He came and killed him. And like, then they ran off into the woods. Wolf is Wolf the Quarrelsome.
Not cool.
Yeah. And now he has a quarrel.
He's got to
this guy.
Yeah.
Not only does he have to finish what he started, but now I need revenge on top of that.
Yeah.
This isn't going to work. So he asks that he needs it immediately. Wolf is already like got his blood up from the fight. I mean, you can assume he's probably wounded or somebody at this point. We don't know for sure. But he's just kind of asks that person, like, which way did they go? And they point it out. And he gets his toughest guys, and he starts running through the woods after Brodier Man. And according to the story, he finds them, and he's got a retinue of his guys, and Brodier of Man has a retinue of his guys, and they fight it out. And it's like, I mean, you said a movie, like I picture like Mortal Kombat, you know, like they're just bloody, they're just massacring each other.
Limbs flying left and right. Yes,
extremely violent. And Wolf's guys win, and they kill all of Brodier's guys except for Brodier. They leave, you know, I'm picturing in the movie version, Wolf's like, you leave him for me, he's mine. And, and they get him. When Wolf gets his hands on him, the way the story describes it, and this is the sentence that made me want to research Wolf the Quarrelsome, and this is the sentence that I could not reproduce in the Guts and Glory books. It's from the story of the burning of Njal, and it says, Wolf the Quarrelsome cut open Brodier's belly and led him round and round the trunk of a tree, and so wound all of his entrails out of him, and he did not die before they were all drawn out of him. Brodier's warriors were slain to a man.
That's seems like a polite diplomatic way to put that.
Yes, that he literally choked him to death with his own guts. Yes, he cut him open with I assume an axe, pulled out his intestines, tied them to a tree, and then made Brodir of Man walk around that tree in a circle until he died.
Oh. That's hardcore.
That's badass. And on top of that, this battle was like a definitive moment in the history of Ireland. They threw the Vikings out, never to return again. So they won. He saved the day, and then he immediately vanishes from history. So he doesn't become part of the government.
Well, I mean, after you do that, you can't really top that. You've won this massive battle for for Ireland, and you've tied someone's guts around a tree. And where do you go from there?
I don't know. And that's it. He just quit.
I think you retire.
Yeah, you're done. He's just done. That's it. That's the end of his story. We don't know when or how he died. We don't know if he got involved with the new government that was going to rule over Ireland. It doesn't seem likely.
He doesn't strike me as a politician.
No, he just kind of, and then there's no more wars, right? The wars are kind of over once the Vikings are out and the country's unified, and that's it. He just kind of retires and vanishes from history, which I love. And that's the kind of story that I came across when I was reading those Viking myths, and I read that one line and I was like, wait, what? And then it goes on. It's just like, and then the Irish won and they established a new government, and the Vikings had to run away and sail back. I'm like, no, can we go back? Can we go back to this for 1 second? Can you give me anything else on this?
Well, the best part is, I think you mentioned that this was written about in this Irish, history book, but also written about in Viking history book, in a Viking history book. So his enemies, Wolf's enemies, are writing about him.
Yes. And that is a great thing for, anytime you're talking about something from the year 1000, especially if it's got like Viking mythology or it's got, this is like an oral tradition that was passed down over, it's basically the Iliad, right? It's like this was passed down orally for a couple hundred years and somebody wrote it down. The fact that, so it makes it kind of tricky as a history person to place the veracity of some of these stories, but because he is written about in both Ireland and in Viking stories, it seems like there must be something to this. And
which one is it? Is it the Irish version or the Viking version that has the guts in the tree?
That's the Viking version. That's the very Viking. That
sounds about right.
It's a very Viking description of what happened to him, but that was a serious death. And that's Wolf the Quarrelsome. He was a big, burly, muscular, angry, quarrelsome Viking killing Irish dude named Wolf, who busted heads, probably helped win a lot of battles for Brian Boru to unite the Kingdom of Ireland, and then crushed the Vikings in combat and killed their leader by strangling him to death with his own intestines. And when people ask me who's my favorite badass, I say Wolf might not be my favorite badass, but he most perfectly encapsulates what I am trying to do with Badass of the Week.
Yeah, we got to do more of these Irish guys.
Yeah, right.
Some fun stuff there.
I think about when we did the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, and the guy was trying to the British politician was trying to politely describe what happened to that German officer who was mad that his boats were being stolen, and it was like, this agent popped up and gave him some north of Scotland stuff. Yeah. And put him out of commission.
Yeah.
This is that kind of vibe.
Exactly. Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, we'll put some Western Ireland stuff on him, and that was the end of him. Yeah. All right. Well, that is Wolf the Quarrelsome. We hope you liked that story, and we hope you will continue to listen to more of these in the future. If you enjoyed this, please do give us a like and subscribe if you're not already. Tell your friends and your enemies about it. Tell people that you want to wind their entrails around trees. Let them know that there's a badass podcast out there that they can listen to, and maybe they'll be afraid of you. Stay tuned for the next one, and we'll see you then.
All right, stay badass.
Badass of the Week is produced by High Five Content. Executive producers are me, Ben Thompson, Dr. Patricia Larish, and Andrew Jacobs. Writing is by me and Pat. Story editing by Ian Jacobs. Mixing and music and sound design by Jude Brewer. Special thanks to Noel Brown at iHeartRadio. Badass of the Week is based on my website, badassoftheweek.com, where you can read all sorts of stories about other badasses. If you want to reach out with questions or ideas, you can email us at badasspodcast@badassoftheweek.com. If you like this podcast, please subscribe, follow, listen, and tell your friends and tell your enemies. And please leave us a rating. We'll be back next week with another one.